President Biden calls for healing and unity, but the party he leads is intent on punishing and silencing those who refuse to acquiesce to their views and their power. That has never, ever been the recipe for unity. Maybe repression, but not unity. Big tech and corporate America have formed a new ruling oligarchy with the political left. You know that I am not given to hyperbole. This supercharged cancel culture is an existential threat to freedom and to our republic as they demand elected leaders resign for representing the people who elected them. They demand docile politicians and a submissive populace that can be easily controlled and used. I say not on my watch, and I feel quite confident my next guest would respond the same way. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So you heard the clip, Joy Reid, MSNBC, calling for you to resign. Why is the left targeting Josh Hawley?
Because I won't bow down to their mob. You know, she's actually, Tony, I have to say, she sounds moderate compared to much of what's coming from the left. They've called for Ted Cruz and me and other members of Congress to be expelled. They've attempted to file ethics proceedings against us, abusing the ethics process. Of course, they're in the midst of a sham impeachment trial against a private citizen, the former president. It is an unbelievable attempt to silence all opposition, to silence anyone who would disagree with them. And it is a threat, Tony, to our democracy. I mean, you are exactly right in your comments. This is a threat to open democratic debate. They don't want unity. They want control. They want total control, and that's what they're trying to get. And I'm not going to go along with it.
Yeah, I mean, just in playing that clip regarding, in fact, I want to play that clip again of Biden yesterday because I want you to respond to this where he calls for unity. So, Bobby, play the clip of Joe Biden yesterday in his executive order.
I'm rescinding the previous administration's harmful ban on diversity and sensitivity training and abolish the offensive counterfactual 1776 Commission. Unity and healing must begin with understanding and truth, not ignorance and lies.
I would agree with the latter part of his statement, but I certainly can't find that in what he has to offer.
Well, and the unity and healing that he is talking about, you have these Democrats in Congress and the media left-wing mob, it is total control of political discourse. What they want is everyone who disagrees with them to shut up, be silenced, be expelled, go away. That includes, Tony, about 75 million American voters. That's half the country,
right,
approximately, who they want to say that basically it's illegitimate, that their votes are illegitimate, that they should repent of ever supporting anybody but the Democrats. This is crazy stuff, and I, for one, am not going to be cowed by the mob. I am not going to be told what to think or do or say by the mob, and I'm going to continue to represent the people of my state without fear or favor to anybody.
Senator, the reality is, in my view, I think they were waiting for the moment to launch this effort, and I think January the 6th gave them a cover of legitimacy to go after and to attack every conservative voice in this country. Now, I think you've long been on their list. They just haven't had the opportunity to come after you because when you were Attorney General of Missouri, you were looking into what big tech was doing. You were on this before most were, understanding where this was leading.
Well, I've gone after the big tech corporations. I've gone after the big multinationals who are now in hock with the left, the folks who sent our jobs away at the same time that they have tried to suppress speech, that they've tried to foist a woke social agenda on the country. And just to go back to something you said a moment ago, Tony, which I think is so important, what we're seeing here is an unprecedented alliance between these big monopoly corporations and the left wing. We're seeing an unprecedented alliance that seeks to entrench the power of these modern-day oligarchs, of these modern-day robber barons, and at the same time to silence the views of ordinary Americans and dissenting political voices. I don't know that we've ever seen quite this much concentrated power in American history, concentrated in so few hands, in the corporate chieftains and in the left. And it's very, very dangerous. And we're going to have to stand up and graciously but firmly oppose it in the name of democracy, the First Amendment, and the Constitution.
Absolutely. Senator, I'm convinced that this is not going to go away. It's not going to go away on its own. We can't just, okay, well, we'll be nice and we'll play by your rules. Their rules are such that they want to squash any resistance. They want complete and total control. If we want to keep our freedoms, I see the only way to keep them is to use them and use them with great effect in these days in which we're living.
That's exactly right. You know, if the Democrats and the left were serious about unity, they would call us to unify around one of the principal bedrock freedoms that all Americans believe in, the First Amendment, the right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of worship, the right to free and open debate. But they're doing just the opposite. And it is a dangerous, dangerous time in this country. And those of us who believe in the Constitution, those of us who believe in free speech, from whatever political persuasion, Tony, whether you say I'm a conservative as I am, or you say, no, I'm more of a liberal, it doesn't matter. If you believe in the First Amendment, free speech, and democracy, this is the time to stand up and say, wait a minute, we've got to preserve those values. We've got to stand up for the right to be heard. We have got to not bow down to the mob.
Yes. I've watched this progression now. I've been here almost 20 years. So I've watched this progression since the election of Barack Obama, where we used to debate these issues, and we can have a good debate. I remember, kind of classic liberals of, Chris Matthews on hardball. We would debate the issues, and you could debate the issues. But then after the election of Barack Obama, they didn't want to debate the issues. And because they didn't have the foundation to stand on, and that's what we see here, they want no one to challenge the direction they're taking this nation because it is unsupportable. You cannot support logically, rationally, with the evidence what they are doing. So what do? They silence the opposition. The question is, Senator, where do we go from here?
Well, I think what we've got to do is we've got to insist on the right of Americans of all political persuasions to be heard, the right to participate in open democratic debate. We've got to resist this idea that if you hold a different opinion or if you represent a part of the country that doesn't agree with the latest agenda, radical agenda of the ruling class, that you can be silenced. And I think, Tony, we've got to go back to the basic things that unite all Americans, the First Amendment,
right,
the principle of democracy.
Right.
Though that's where we've got to take our stand.
And have civil debate. I mean, you can disagree. And when I was first elected 25 years ago, we debated issues, and then we would go have lunch. And we would sit down and we would talk, and we had friends on both sides of the aisle. But this has become such that when you repress people and do not allow them to talk, what happens is you foster not unity, but greater division and anger, and this is going to lead to a very, very dangerous outcome for our country.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, this is why it's so important that there be open democratic debate, and it's why the lies of the left wing, and they are lies, lies saying that if you wanted to talk about election integrity, as Ted Cruz and I did, and 140 House members, other senators, if you want to talk about election integrity on the floor of the Senate, that's the same thing as inciting
Right.
violence. That's the same thing as being a criminal rioter. I tell you, that is destructive to the very idea of democracy. That says there can be no debate.
Right.
There can be no conversation. If I disagree with you, I'll try to criminalize you.
So
that's what the left-wing mob is headed.
You're handling that, and that's what's coming at you. You're inciting. You're all of these different things. You're a racist. You're everything. So, but most Americans who just want to get along, they want to raise their kids, they want to take them to soccer practice, they want to come home, they want to have dinner together. And so they're hesitant. They don't know how to deal with these labels that are thrown on them, that just because they say they like President Trump, they're a racist, they're a white supremacist. So how do they deal with that?
Well, I think that, first of all, we've got to stand firm and be clear and not buy into the media lies. I mean, I've talked to so many people in Missouri, Tony, small business folks who contributed to Republicans or maybe contributed to a church now that say, oh, my gosh, that church is, it's anti this or that, and therefore you should be boycotted. You should be put on a blacklist. That is the real danger here. I mean, when they go after people like Ted Cruz and me, it's not really about us. It's about the people we represent.
Right.
And it's about ultimately the 75 million Americans who took a different view in this last election, and they now want to crush all of that dissent and squelch that kind of speech. So I just think for folks out there, the only way that the left-wing mob wins is if we bow down to them and we're afraid. We cannot be afraid. Well, this is the time to graciously but firmly stand and say, no, this is my view. I'm protected by the First Amendment. I'm going to make it clear, and I'm not going to bow down.
Well, Josh Hawley, I want to thank you for not only representing the millions of voters in Missouri, but I want to thank you for representing conservatives across the country and those who value our First Amendment freedom of speech, that you are not going silent. In fact, you're cranking up the volume. I'm all for that. Josh Hawley, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.